Morning, everybody. Welcome to the BD School of Business. It's amazing and wonderful to see so many of you, so thank you for coming. One of the things that's pretty unique relative to many other MBA programs is our cohort size. So 55 is the maximum. We have slightly smaller cohorts. So doing a sample class for 150 people is slightly different. It doesn't have the same sort of intimacy, but we'll try, okay? We'll try, bear with me. What I want to do is give you a sample of how you would learn in these programs. It's not just a case of listen to someone talk, you do stuff, and you do stuff because we want you to experience and reflect and learn, and I'll go through that. When you did your undergraduate degrees, you're largely learning with strangers, often moving around, open programs, and you'll spend a year or 2 years together with your cohort in teams, working together, working on problems, advancing yourself, advancing your own companies, creating new companies. And again, I want to sort of give a taste about the sort of group dynamics and in terms of what you would experience if you come to the BD School of Business. So the BD experience and experiential learning go together. And what do we mean by experiential learning? Well, we want you to experience stuff. So you do a simulation, you go on a field trip, you'd work on a project, you would act out a presentation, you would deliver something, you do something, okay? Something related to leadership, entrepreneurship, innovation, management, project management. And once you've done it, you would say, well, what happened? What went up? What went down? Revenues, morale, waste, quality. What changed? So you did something, and you might be passively reading a case, or you might actually be running a simulation, or you might be doing a project, or you might be negotiating, and what actually happened? What changed in it? And you think about this, and you say, well, this is what went up, and this is what went down, and this is what went bad, and this was good. But then you say, so what? Why did it change? Okay, why did that happen? Why did someone get angry? Why did someone get sad? Why did someone leave? Why did someone stay? What is the causal explanation? So rather than just guessing, you can actually draw upon sort of research-informed learning and be able to draw conclusions which are more than just guessing and shooting from the hip. It's evidence-based, okay? And so you say, so what? And then you say, now what? What am I going to do differently? How am I going to change my team? How am I going to change my organization? How am I going to change myself? What do I stop doing and what do I start doing from this learning, okay? And so that's what we try to install in all of our programs and in many of our classes, this sort of cycle of learning. You experience something, you say, what happened, so what, now what, and you go through. Okay? We expect you to do that also in a principled way. Okay? You're working with others. Okay? Have responsibilities for your actions. You're going to work in teams. You're going to work with companies. We expect you to do it in a purposeful way. If you come to the BD School of Business, we know you're not coming here because you're bored and you've got too much money lying around at home and stuff. You're coming here for a reason. You want to do something. You want to go somewhere. Okay? So what is your agenda? What is your calling? Where are you going? And how does your learning help you get there, okay? It's not about grades, it's about where you want to go. Grades are just something which we use as a control mechanism, okay? But it's where you want to go which is more important. We're going to play a little game. And coming around very soon will be a set of materials on your table. You have 20 sticks of uncooked spaghetti, 1 meter of tape, 1 meter of string, and 1 marshmallow. These are your building materials, and you can only build what you're going to build from the building materials. You can't use anything else, okay? You are going to build a freestanding structure, and you're going to have 18 minutes to build this freestanding structure. The winning team is the team that has the tallest structure measured from the top of the table. And we will go around and there will be lavish prizes for the members of the winning team, okay? So you have 18 minutes, there's going to be a countdown clock, and you have to build the tallest structure, okay? Go. So remember, it's got to be freestanding, no taping it to the table, and the marshmallow has to be on top. You're at the halfway point. You have 9 minutes left. You have 3 minutes remaining. 3 minutes remaining. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Move away, move away. Whoa! So we had 64 centimeters here and 68 centimeters there. Congratulations, well done. Remember this slide. You are going to experience something. So this was not a lesson in building structural towers, okay? Okay, this was not a lesson, but you experienced something, okay? What were the outcomes? What does working look like? If you had to, what does something works and something, what does not working look like? Like this table? Or, you know, or that table? What does not working look like?
It was very unstable, or it just wasn't moving it forward.
It's not achieving the goals. But we also had interactions and team dynamics and, you know, different levels of engagement. And then we're going to think about so what? Okay, so what explained why some teams did better than other teams? What explains how some teams can get another 20, 30 centimeters on top of this? You know, what explains that? And then you would say, well, in terms of what I'm going to do differently with my teams or my life, what we're going to change. So let's just go through this. What process did you follow? If you had to go home tonight and tell a friend, a parent, a partner, a children, what you did, what was your process? You know, what planning? Planning. So you did planning. What did you do after planning?
Communicate ideal,
Sharing the responsibility. Teamwork.
There's teamwork going on. There's planning and teamwork. Did you allocate roles?
Yes.
Yeah.
We talked about our busy tolerance as well. What we're willing to do.
Who was in charge of learning? You have a team. You know, in terms of you've got more hands than you have than you need. One group appointed somebody to go around, walking around, looking and observing in terms of doing things. Okay. Okay. So they appointed someone to be in charge of learning. How else would you describe the process?
Trust. You can trust that you can let go of control. Like, okay, don't let, you know.
Just quite linear, like you plan and then test it and then you see.
It's very linear. Okay. Remember that. It's very linear. You start with planning and you go through the sequential process. Remember that. There's a guy, his name here is Tom, right at the very bottom, and he's gone around and he's done this lots of times and he's trying to work out, you know, what makes success and what doesn't make success. And so the average is 50 centimeters. So look, these are great results. Well done. Well done. Traditional managers who don't do a BD MBA only get 25, okay? I only get 25 centimeters. Lawyers, a bit more than managers. Kindergarten children. So why might that be? They have a very different approach. They learn by prototyping. They learn by prototyping. So remember the comments we had about planning and a sequential linear process all the way through? That's how managers, traditional sensible people who don't like to fail, think. People who are afraid of failure think, because we don't like failure in many cases. And so traditional managers, they understand, they plan, they build, and maybe only 30% of you avoided this, okay? Because you go through this sequential process. You have 18 minutes and you go through that process once. And we have some great success here. And the number of failures, that's typical because you follow through this process. What kindergarten children do is that they will go through and build 3 or 4 prototypes in the 18 minutes. And no one's taught them to do this, they just do it. And by doing it, they're learning about failure and learning what worked and what didn't work. And as long as they don't destroy their spaghetti in the process so it's unusable by the time they get to this stage, that learning carries forward. So as long as they're not destroying resources in terms of that learning, and that's the key difference. Thankfully, these professionals do quite well. In terms of his research, one of the things is that this is how when we say we're a research school and we're sort of grounded in practice and informed by researchers, it's not just war stories. We're trying to provide evidence to show what works and what doesn't work. And so this is evidence. This is just one study, but it's evidence of what works and what doesn't work. And again, the learning points are not how to build structures or spaghetti towers. There are different learning points. CEOs do pretty well, and CEOs who have some sort of support role. So someone who's going around, so we had a learning role in some tables, but who was actually supporting? Who was actually helping and encouraging and wiping the brows of people, giving them water to drink and supporting them and making sure that they were all supported. And so we know that team dynamics are important and team roles are important. So prototyping is one lesson. The next thing is that diversity is good. So you have different roles on the table. And when you look at the diversity, we're not just talking about gender diversity or cultural diversity. We're talking about things like differences in the preferences of the attitudes, so who's risk-taking and who's conservative. Differences in terms of expertise, so some of you have software backgrounds, some of you have engineering backgrounds. We know that the diversity is good. We also know that you have to have the right blend of diversity. And so we know that if you have too much diversity, performance goes down. And if you have too little diversity, performance doesn't go up. And so having the right optimal mix in terms of disparity and variety, and you learn that, but you might plan it next time and utilize it and understand how to actually maximize. I said that we have very lavish prizes for the winning team, which they've been awarded. Thankfully, they're not too lavish. I didn't tell you what they were. If I told you that $1 million was on this, these numbers would go down by 10, 15 centimeters, and we'd have even more failure. Okay? So when he repeats the same experiment and there's high cash prizes, the pressure of the prize crushes. It provides a pressure, and it reduces your performance in this exercise quite significantly. So incentives plus low skills doesn't equal success, but incentives plus skills equal success. So if you have the right skills and the incentives are right but not crushing, you'll get performance. So there was a couple of very short pre-readings for this session. Usually the readings are much more in-depth and they have a lot more information. Let's talk about Stacy and Mark. And the question for the reading was, how did they achieve so much with so little? Okay, so let's recap. What did Stacy and Mark do? What do they eventually do? What's the outcome? They sold pita chips. Okay, so their freestanding structure, their outcome, is a pita chip manufacturing business. Okay. What did Stacy and Mark do to get there? How did they get to having this fairly significant company that eventually gets bought by a major chip company? Did they just wake up and say, we're going to create a chip company? What did they do? What did they start off doing? Something they loved. And they wanted to open a restaurant. Did they open a restaurant? No. What did they do? Food truck. Why didn't they open a restaurant? It's too big a step. It's too big a tower. It's too high a marshmallow. Okay? So they did something that they could, a small step, a small prototype, which was a food truck. What did they learn from running the food truck?
That people love the pizza chips more than what other things they sell.
Absolutely. So that's the key learning outcome. And what happened to get to that point? Bigger lineups. Why do they have lineups? Because the food was good. So they know that they're good at making food, they're great at making sandwiches, they have massive lineups. They've almost done a BD MBA. They know about queue management and operations management and know how to manage queues. So they decide to bake wasted pita bread at the end of the day, and they issue that out, and people love the pita chips even more than they love the bread. Okay? So they wanted to start with a restaurant. That was their goal. But they end up with a food truck, and then they end up with a pita chip manufacturing facility. Once they go down the pita chip manufacturing facility, what do? Do they rent a factory straight away and borrow $1 million and do gap? What do?
They're leveraging existing equipment.
They're leveraging existing resources. You had existing resources. I limited your resources. You had a bag full of resources. What were their resources that they leveraged? Where do you think they cooked their first pita chips? At home. At home. That's their existing resources. What did they do next? They bought used equipment, small escalating steps, and they're learning from it. But they're learning automatically. They're not sort of saying, I'm going to go in with a hypothesis and I'm going to test it, although they could do that. But they're taking learning what people love, learning what works, just like the marshmallow exercise in kindergarten children. What works, what doesn't work, what's the learning in terms of going forward? How did they do marketing? Did they spend $1 million on marketing? Free samples. What else do they do?
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth. Where else? Just observing in terms of, and that leads to sales, it leads to learning, it leads to prototyping. They can't afford to go to the food trade shows, so they go there and just hang out and watch and do. In the car park, they're actually giving out samples of people going in because they can't actually afford. Okay, they've only got the resources that you were given, very limited resources, but they prototype and take small steps and they learn. So they have a passion and they go through the food cart business and they end up making a chip manufacturing company. And you see that they go through those prototyping steps and they actually bifurcate, they pivot, they go in a different way. So their vision was to run a restaurant, but they're not actually running, they're running a food manufacturing company. But it's a series of escalating steps. Because if you sit down and say, yeah, I'm going to create a chip manufacturing company, and you look at the market, and you look at the gap, and you look at what's invested, you get crushed by the numbers. You get crushed. So unless you've got very rich parents who can say, yeah, I'll give you $20 million of investment to start off, and I'll back you, et cetera, you get crushed by the actual process. What's Jim's story? What were Jim's steps? So he makes the big belly trash cans. There's some of these actually in Vancouver. Solar-powered trash cans. How much did it cost to actually make this when he first got the quote? 80,000 to 200,000 or 300,000. So how did he make his first trash can? What did he do? What did he do? Huh? He bought old food compactors from restaurants and he made them himself. What was the key market he wanted to test? Vale. Why Vale? So they have money, environmentally conscious, remote and hard garbage collection. Does he make money on the sale to Vale? No, he doesn't. So they say, yes, we'll take one. He doesn't even have one made. He sells it at a loss. When he delivers it, it falls off the truck and breaks in front of everybody. It doesn't break. It falls off the truck and survives. It's a great experiment. But he gives it away pretty much for free at a loss so he can learn from it. It's a series of escalating experiments. Even when he does his job internship at the solar power company, that's a small prototyping step. He's there. He's trying to convince them to make this. The management won't do it. He's learning why they won't do it, what's their resistance, what's their rejection. It's a learning moment for him. He takes that learning going forward. He doesn't just say, yes, I'm going to make this. That's what you just did. So Jim, he has his own study of the US waste collection industry. He looks at, gets all the numbers, fuel consumption. That's a small prototyping step. He builds a proof of concept using kitchen trash compactors. His first customer is Vail, and he does it to learn. His final design and manufacturing, he builds it themselves. And it's all about small prototyping and escalating steps. We're not designed to do that. We're designed 18 minutes. What can I produce? One outcome in 18 minutes. And in a risky environment like this where you're dealing with wobbly spaghetti, that's how you get high levels of failure. But if you prototyped, you get more success and more learning. So we experiment, and we understand what the test is, and we learn from that experiment, and it uses us to reshape. That's part of the BD experiment. All the way through, everything we do is a series of experiments, but you've got to sit back and reflect. You've got to reflect. Okay, it's not just about grades. It's not just about producing. Always ask yourself, why am I here? Where do I want to go? And why am I doing this experiment? Why am I doing this assignment, this project, this game, this simulation? Where do I want to go? How do I want to change myself? How do I want to change my team and change my organization? Two modes of thinking. So we can use this to learn about entrepreneurship. And what we know is that entrepreneurs have more of this thinking, the effectual mindset. Small actions start with what you have. It's iterative and experiment. And what we would think of as classic managers, accountants, are about control, reliability, zero tolerance to failure, and there are many, many roles for that. You don't want people with these mindsets running nuclear power plants, okay? But you want people with those mindsets innovating, creating, and changing, okay? There are many, many roles in life where you don't want failure, and you're rewarded and recognized, and that's the traditional mindset, the causal mindset. And so the kindergarten children have effectual mindsets, and as they get older and older and older and older, they get transformed into causal mindsets. So they start with effectual, and they transfer into causal as they get older and older. What we know is that, as I said, traditional managers have very causal, serial, innovative entrepreneurs, and innovative entrepreneurs rather than sort of franchise entrepreneurs have very high. We also know that organizations have a blend of people. We know that on your table, some of you are causal and some of you are effectual, and some of you can flip-flop between and some of you can't. And so when you're starting founding companies and teams and projects, understand those mindsets. So if you have to produce one outcome in time for a Christmas, you want to be more causal. If you want to produce a legendary, life-changing product, you maybe need to have more effectual mindsets in the team in terms of balancing that. So just to conclude, we test, we prototype, we experience so that we can learn. You'll see that there wasn't many disagreements, but you can see that you learn and you engage. When you produce a prototype, people can see it, people can question it, people can poke it, people can see if it actually stands up. Lots of conversations were going on. Conversations with customers, conversations with suppliers. Failing cheaply and quickly is important, okay? You say, well, what are the $500 steps I can take, in terms of projects? And this is not just about entrepreneurship, this is innovation within companies, innovation on your own as an entrepreneur as well. What you went through was a very simple entrepreneurial cycle, but we could use it for project management, operations management, organizational dynamics, and leadership. And so just to go back, this defines much of the learning you will get in our programs. You went through an experience, what happened, what is success, what are the dependent variables, here it's height or no height, here it's arguments and fallouts and friendships. Why did these happen? Why did you have good things and bad things happen? What explains it? What is the evidence-based explanation for why you got this outcome? Do you understand it so that you can make evidence-based decisions in your own teams in your life? And then what are you going to change? What are you going to change personally? What are you going to change in your teams? What are you going to change in your organizations? Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing some of you.